Tom Bradley stood in his driveway on that bright Saturday morning, feeling pretty good about life. After 25 years of working crazy hours, dealing with the worst of humanity and missing more family dinners than he could count, he'd finally made it to a place where he could slow down a bit. The new house in Oakwood Hills was perfect. Quiet streets, nice neighbors, actual trees in the yard. His wife Beth had been dreaming about a place like this for years. The moving boxes were finally unpacked, mostly anyway, and Beth had suggested they do a garage sale. Get rid of all the junk they'd been hauling around for 2 decades. Tom wasn't usually the garage sale type, but he figured why not? Meet some neighbors, make a few bucks, and clear out the garage so he could actually park his car in there for once. He'd done everything by the book. Went on the HOA website, read through the rules about garage sales. 48 hours notice to the board, that's what it said. So he'd sent an email to the HOA address listed right there on the site on Thursday afternoon. Got his confirmation receipt and everything. Printed out the permit form from the website, filled it in and put it in a plastic sleeve so it wouldn't get messed up. Even made sure his signs weren't bigger than the 18 by 24 inches they specified. Tom was the kind of guy who followed rules. It was just how he was wired after all these years. Beth had been up since 6 that morning, organizing tables and pricing things. She had a whole system worked out with colored stickers. The woman could organize anything. By 8 o'clock, they had everything set up nice and neat. Old furniture, kitchen stuff they never used. Boxes of books, some tools, and a bunch of kids' toys from when their daughter was little. Nothing fancy, just regular family stuff that needed a new home. The morning started off great. Mrs. Patterson from next door came over first thing, bought a lamp and stayed to chat for 20 minutes about the neighborhood. She seemed genuinely happy to have them there. Then a couple with a baby stopped by looking for toys. They left with 3 bags worth of stuff and big smiles on their faces. A retired guy from down the street bought some tools and invited Tom to a poker game on Wednesday nights. This was exactly what Beth had hoped for. Just good, normal neighbor stuff. Around 10:30, Tom was helping a teenage kid load a bookshelf into his truck when he heard the sound of a car coming up fast, really fast for a residential street. He turned around and saw this silver Mercedes practically screech to a stop at the edge of his driveway. Not in a spot, just sort of blocking half the street. The door flew open, and out stepped a woman who looked like she meant business. She was probably in her late 50s, wearing what Tom could only describe as power casual. Expensive workout clothes that had probably never seen an actual workout, big sunglasses, perfectly styled blonde hair, and she was carrying a clipboard. Never a good sign when someone shows up at your house with a clipboard. She marched up the driveway like she owned the place, and Tom got that familiar feeling in his gut, the one that told him this was about to be a situation. "Excuse me," she said, but it wasn't really a question. It was more like an accusation. "Are you the homeowner here?" Tom smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am, that's me. Tom Bradley. Just moved in last month." She didn't offer her hand or introduce herself, just looked around at the garage sale like she was inspecting a crime scene. "I'm Patricia Holbrook, president of the Oakwood Hills HOA, and I need you to explain to me why you think you can just set up shop here without proper authorization." Tom blinked. This wasn't what he'd expected. "Well, I filed for a permit through the HOA website on Thursday. Got the confirmation and everything. I've got the permit right here if you want to see it." He walked over to the table where he'd taped the permit form, clearly visible. Patricia followed him, her heels clicking on the driveway. She glanced at it for maybe half a second. "I never received any notification about this," she said flatly. "And as HOA president, all garage sale permits must be personally approved by me. Not some automated website system." Tom kept his voice calm. "The website says 48 hours notice to the board email address. That's what I did. The rules say—" "I don't care what some outdated website says." Patricia cut him off. "The actual bylaws require my personal approval, which you do not have." She flipped through papers on her clipboard, pulled out a pre-printed form and started filling it in. "This is a violation notice. You have 1 hour to pack up all of this and cease operations." Beth had walked over now, having heard the raised voices. "Wait, hold on. My husband followed all the rules. We can show you the email confirmation, the timestamp, everything." Patricia barely looked at her. 1 hour. Or you'll be assessed a $500 fine for each day of violation. And trust me, I will be driving by here every single day to check." Tom felt that old familiar anger starting to bubble up, but he pushed it down. He'd dealt with plenty of people who liked to throw their weight around. The key was staying calm. Ma'am, I'd be happy to work with you here, but I need to see the specific bylaw you're referring to. The documentation I have says this sale is permitted. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Are you arguing with me? I've been HOA president for 8 years. I know these rules better than some new resident who just got here. Your signs are oversized, your tables extend beyond the permitted boundary of your driveway, and you're creating a traffic hazard. She waved her hand at the street where exactly one car was parked. I could have you towed right now. The signs are exactly 18 by 24, Tom said evenly. I measured them myself, and I'm not in the street. Don't tell me what I can see with my own eyes, Patricia snapped. She was getting worked up now, her face flushing. I'm going to make this very simple for you, Mr. Bradley. You can pack this up voluntarily, or I can call the police and have them shut you down. Your choice. But either way, this garage sale is over. I know the sheriff personally, so don't think you can just ignore me. A few of the neighbors who'd been browsing had stopped to watch now. Tom noticed an older Asian woman shaking her head sadly. A middle-aged guy in a Cubs hat was filming the whole thing on his phone. Beth put her hand on Tom's arm, giving him that look that said, "Stay calm." Patricia pulled out her own phone and started taking pictures of everything. The signs, the tables, the merchandise, even Tom's truck, making a big show of it. Evidence, she announced to no one in particular. For the HOA board and the police. 1 hour, Mr. Bradley, I'd suggest you get started. She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. Oh, and welcome to the neighborhood. Next time, follow the rules. The smile she gave him was anything but friendly. Tom watched her get back in her Mercedes and drive off, probably going about twice the speed limit for the neighborhood. He let out a long breath. What just happened? Beth asked quietly. Before Tom could answer, the older woman who'd been shaking her head walked over. Don't worry about her, honey. That's just Patricia being Patricia. She does this to everyone. I'm Helen Chen, by the way. I live 3 houses down. She can't actually shut down a legal garage sale, can she? Beth asked. Helen laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Legal doesn't matter much to Patricia. She fined me $1,200 last year for a garden gnome, said it violated aesthetic standards, threatened to put a lien on my house if I didn't pay. The guy with the Cubs hat came over too. I'm recording everything in case you need it. She tried to fine me for parking my own work van in my own driveway, said it was a commercial vehicle. He shook his head. Woman's out of control, but nobody ever stands up to her. Tom looked at his watch. Patricia had said 1 hour. He looked at Beth, then at the neighbors who were all watching to see what he'd do. He thought about all those years of dealing with bullies and people who abused whatever tiny bit of power they had. Then he smiled. Well, he said to the small crowd that had gathered, I guess she'll be calling the police then, because this garage sale isn't going anywhere. The hour came and went. Tom kept the garage sale running, helping customers, making change, and chatting with neighbors who stopped by. Some came just to browse, but a lot of them came because word had spread about the confrontation with Patricia. Small neighborhoods were like that. News traveled fast. Beth was nervous, Tom could tell. She kept glancing down the street, expecting to see that silver Mercedes come racing back. Are you sure about this? She asked him quietly while they were restocking a table. I mean, $500 a day adds up fast. Tom squeezed her hand. Trust me. We're fine. We followed the rules. She's just trying to intimidate us. Well, it's kind of working, Beth admitted. Around noon, right on schedule, Patricia's Mercedes came rolling back down the street. This time she wasn't alone. A younger woman was with her, also carrying a clipboard. They both got out and marched up the driveway like they were conducting a military inspection. I see you've chosen to ignore my direct order, Patricia announced loud enough for half the block to hear. Big mistake, Mr. Bradley, huge mistake. The younger woman started taking more pictures, walking around the whole setup. Patricia pulled out a tape measure and made a show of measuring the distance from Tom's table to the edge of the driveway. She measured the signs. She even measured the gap between the folding chairs Beth had set up. Your table extends 7 inches past the permitted zone, Patricia declared, writing furiously on her clipboard. That's violation number 2. Your signs, while I'll admit are technically within size limits, are posted in a manner that creates visual pollution. Violation number 3. And you have more than the permitted number of tables. Violation number 4. Tom looked at his 3 folding tables. The permit doesn't specify a table limit. Section 12, subsection D, Patricia shot back without missing a beat. Maximum of 2 display tables for garage sales. You have 3. Can I see that section? Tom asked calmly. Patricia clutched her clipboard to her chest. These documents are HOA property. I don't have to show you anything. You'll receive official copies of all violations via certified mail, along with your fines. Let's see, 4 violations at $500 each, that's $2,000 per day. Beth's face went pale. Tom put his arm around her shoulders. And since you're clearly planning to continue this illegal operation, Patricia continued, I'm documenting that this is willful defiance of HOA authority. That carries additional penalties. She smiled that cold smile again. I warned you. Now you'll learn the hard way how things work in Oakwood Hills. Helen Chen had been watching from her yard and came walking over, moving pretty fast for someone in her 70s. Oh, give it a rest, Patricia. The man filed his permit properly. I saw him do it. We were both on the HOA website that same day. Stay out of this, Helen, Patricia snapped. Unless you want me to revisit your garden gnome situation. You already stole $1,200 from me over a gnome, Helen said, not backing down. What else are you going to do? The younger woman with Patricia looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Holbrook, maybe we should... Don't tell me what we should do, Brittany. Patricia cut her off. Just keep taking pictures. More neighbors had gathered now. The guy with the Cubs hat was back, phone out and recording again. A couple with twin toddlers stood watching from the sidewalk. An older gentleman Tom hadn't met yet walked up carrying what looked like a folder full of papers. Is she hassling you about a garage sale? The older man asked Tom. He had a weathered face and kind eyes. Let me guess. Unauthorized operation? Excessive violations? Threats of massive fines? Tom nodded. That about covers it. The man turned to Patricia. You did the same thing to me 2 years ago, Patricia, remember? You said my garage sale violated some made-up rule about weekend operations. Fined me $800. I paid it because my wife was sick and I didn't have the energy to fight. But I never forgot. If you violated the bylaws, Donald, then you deserved the fine, Patricia said primly. I looked up those bylaws after my wife passed. Donald continued, his voice steady but angry. You know what I found? The rule you cited didn't exist. You made it up. And when I tried to get my money back, you told me the HOA board had already allocated those funds. Funny thing, though, when I requested financial records, suddenly everything was too complicated to explain. Patricia's face was getting red. How dare you accuse me of... I'm not accusing, Donald interrupted. I'm stating facts. Facts I've documented. He held up his folder. 2 years of documentation about your little schemes. A woman Tom recognized from down the street spoke up. She threatened to foreclose on my house over a fence dispute. A fence that's been there for 15 years. Said I needed to pay $3,000 in back fines for an unauthorized structure or she'd start legal proceedings. My cousin paid her $2,000 last year for parking an RV in his driveway, someone else called out. Said it was an eyesore. He only had it there for 2 days while loading it for a camping trip. Patricia was spinning around trying to address everyone at once. You're all taking his side? Someone you don't even know? I've been serving this community for 8 years. Keeping property values up? Maintaining standards. And this is the thanks I get? Serving yourself, you mean? Helen said quietly. We've all been too scared to say anything because you go after anyone who challenges you. But maybe Tom here doesn't scare so easy. Patricia pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Tom. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have connections in this town. The mayor, the sheriff, the county commissioners. You think you can just move in here and disrespect everything we've built? I will bury you in violations. I will make your life here miserable. And when you finally give up and move, everyone will see what happens when you cross the HOA. Tom had been quiet through most of this, just observing. He'd learned a long time ago that sometimes the best move was to let people keep talking. They usually told you everything you needed to know if you gave them enough rope. And Patricia was giving him plenty. Are you threatening me? Tom asked, keeping his voice level. I'm promising you, Patricia hissed. Pack this up right now, pay your fines, and maybe I'll go easy on you. Otherwise, I'll be back here every single day finding new violations. I'll make it my personal mission. The young woman, Brittany, had stopped taking pictures. She was staring at her shoes, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. Tom almost felt bad for her. She was probably some neighborhood kid Patricia had roped into this. I appreciate you explaining your position, Tom said calmly, but I'm going to keep my garage sale open until 5 o'clock, just like my permit allows. And I'm not paying any fines for violations that don't exist. Patricia's eyes went wide. Nobody talked to her like that. You could see it on her face. Fine, I'm calling the police right now. Let's see how tough you are when you're being arrested for trespassing on HOA-regulated property. It's his property, Helen pointed out. HOA-regulated, Patricia screamed. She was losing it now. I'm calling Sheriff Morrison right now. He'll straighten this out. He owes me favors. She pulled out her phone and made a big production of dialing, put it on speaker so everyone could hear. After 3 rings, someone picked up. But it wasn't the sheriff. Sheriff's Department, Deputy Andrews speaking. I need to speak to Sheriff Morrison immediately, Patricia demanded. This is Patricia Holbrook, HOA President of Oakwood Hills. I have an emergency situation. Sheriff's in a meeting, ma'am. Can I help you? Get him out of the meeting. Tell him Patricia Holbrook needs him now. There was a pause. Ma'am, I can take your information and have him call you back, but I can't interrupt. Patricia hung up and dialed again. This time a different number. Morrison, it's Patricia. I need you to send an officer to 847 Maple Drive immediately. We have someone operating an illegal business in violation of HOA regulations and he's refusing to shut down. Tom couldn't hear the response, but Patricia's face went through several interesting expressions. Confusion, disbelief, then anger. What do you mean you can't help? This is exactly what we pay taxes for. I don't care if he has a permit, I'm telling you. Yes, I'm the HOA president, that means something. Fine, send whoever you can. I want this documented. She ended the call and glared at Tom like this was somehow his fault. An officer will be here within the hour. We'll see what you have to say when you're being cited for multiple violations. Tom just smiled, looking forward to it. Patricia stormed back to her car, Brittany trailing behind her like a reluctant shadow. The Mercedes peeled out, leaving rubber marks on the street. Donald came over and shook Tom's hand. I don't know what you do for a living, son, but you've got nerves of steel. Nobody's ever stood up to her like that. Just following the rules, Tom said simply. Beth was gripping his arm tight. Tom, what if the police really do side with her? What if she does know the sheriff? Tom looked at his watch. Then I guess we'll find out soon enough. Helen patted Beth's shoulder. Honey, whatever happens, you've got the whole neighborhood on your side now. Patricia's been needing someone to stand up to her for years. Let's just hope standing up to her doesn't cost us our life savings, Beth murmured. Tom went back to helping customers, but his mind was already working through scenarios. He'd dealt with enough power-hungry people to know how this usually played out. The question was whether Patricia was just a bully, or if she actually had the connections she claimed. Either way, things were about to get interesting. He had a feeling that Silver Mercedes would be back soon, and this time she'd have backup. 40 minutes later, Tom was helping a young couple negotiate over a coffee table when he heard the familiar sound of that silver Mercedes coming back down the street. Right behind it was a police cruiser. Lights off, but definitely official. Beth grabbed his hand and squeezed hard. Here we go, Tom muttered. Patricia got out of her car first, looking triumphant. She'd changed clothes somewhere along the way, now wearing a blazer over her workout gear. Trying to look more official, Tom figured. She waited by her car, arms crossed, while the police cruiser pulled up behind her. A young officer stepped out, probably mid-20s, clean-cut and professional-looking. He had that fresh-out-of-the-academy look about him. The kid was already pulling out a notepad as he approached, his face neutral and businesslike. Good afternoon, the officer said, directing his words to everyone in general. I'm Officer Kevin Reyes. I got a call about a possible HOA violation dispute. Who's the homeowner here? Tom stepped forward, wiping his hands on his jeans. That'd be me, officer. Tom Bradley. He's operating an illegal garage sale. Patricia jumped in before Officer Reyes could say anything else. I'm Patricia Holbrook, HOA president. I've documented multiple violations, refused orders to cease operations, and willful defiance of HOA authority. Officer Reyes held up a hand politely. Ma'am, I'll need to speak with Mr. Bradley first and review the situation. If you could just give me a moment. Patricia's mouth pinched into a tight line, but she nodded stiffly. Officer Reyes turned to Tom with a professional but friendly expression. Sir, do you have your garage sale permit? And I'll need to see your ID as well. Of course, Tom said. He walked over to the table where he'd kept the permit displayed and handed it to the officer. Then he reached for his wallet, pulled out his driver's license and handed that over too. Officer Reyes took both documents and started reviewing them. His eyes scanned the permit first, then moved to the driver's license. Tom watched the exact moment the officer's expression changed. His eyes widened slightly, then he looked up at Tom, then back down at the ID, then up again. "Chief Bradley?" Officer Reyes said quietly, his voice suddenly much different. "Sir, I didn't realize you'd moved to this area." Tom gave him a small nod. "Just last month." Still getting settled in, the young officer straightened up a bit like he'd just been called to attention. "I'm Officer Reyes, sir. I worked traffic detail during that multi-department task force last spring. We met briefly at the coordination meeting." "I remember," Tom said, though honestly he'd met about 200 officers during that operation. "You did good work on that." Patricia had been standing close enough to hear this exchange, and Tom saw the exact moment it registered. Her face went from smug satisfaction to confusion to something that might have been panic. She took a step forward. "Wait, what? Chief, what does that mean?" Officer Reyes turned to her, his professionalism back in place. "Ma'am, Mr. Bradley is Detective Chief Tom Bradley. He's head of the Major Crimes Division for the county." The color drained from Patricia's face, then rushed back in a dark red flush. "You're a police chief?" "Detective chief," Tom corrected mildly. "Little different, but close enough." Patricia's mouth opened and closed a few times. Around them, the neighbors who'd stuck around to watch were starting to smile. Helen Chen looked like Christmas had come early. The guy with the Cubs hat was still recording, and now he was grinning ear to ear. Officer Reyes cleared his throat and focused on the task at hand. "Chief, do you mind if I take a look at your setup here? Just to document everything properly." "Go right ahead," Tom said. The young officer walked around the driveway, examining the signs, the tables, the merchandise. He pulled out his own tape measure and checked distances. He took a few photos with his phone. Patricia followed him around like a nervous shadow, trying to point out violations. "See, the table extends past the boundary," she insisted, her voice getting higher. "And there are too many tables. And the signs are positioned wrong." Officer Reyes didn't respond to her, just kept doing his inspection. After about 5 minutes, he came back to where Tom was standing. He referred to his notepad. "Okay, so I've checked everything against the HOA bylaws that are posted on the county website," Officer Reyes said officially. The permit was filed correctly through the proper channels, 48 hours in advance as required. The signs are within size specifications and posted in permitted locations. The tables and merchandise are all within the homeowner's property boundaries. "I don't see any violations here." "That's impossible," Patricia sputtered. "I personally documented 4 separate violations." 4. Officer Reyes turned to her calmly. "Ma'am, I can only enforce actual laws and properly established regulations. From what I can see, Mr. Bradley has followed all the HOA rules as they're written. If there's a dispute about HOA bylaws themselves, that's a civil matter between you and the homeowner. It's not a police matter." "But I'm the HOA president," Patricia said, her voice rising. "I know the rules. I wrote half of them." "Then, with respect, ma'am, you might want to review them," Officer Reyes suggested. "Because what you described to dispatch as violations don't appear to match what's actually in the bylaws." Patricia's face was going through a whole range of colors now. "This is ridiculous. You're taking his side because he's a cop. This is professional courtesy or whatever you call it. This is corrupt." Officer Reyes's expression hardened slightly. "Ma'am, I'm doing my job. I reviewed the situation objectively, checked the regulations, and determined that no violations have occurred." "That's not corruption. That's following procedure." "I want to speak to your supervisor," Patricia demanded. "Right now." "Call him." "Her," Officer Reyes corrected. "And you're welcome to file a complaint if you feel I've acted improperly. The information is on my card." He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. Patricia snatched it like it had personally insulted her. "You can bet I will. And I'll be calling Sheriff Morrison directly. He and I go way back." "That's your right, ma'am," Officer Reyes said evenly. Tom had been quiet through most of this, just observing. Now he spoke up. "Officer Reyes, I appreciate you coming out and reviewing everything. I know Patricia called this in with concerns, and I'm glad we could clear it up officially." "Just doing my job, sir," Officer Reyes said. He turned to Patricia one more time. "Ma'am, Mr. Bradley has every right to continue his garage sale as permitted. If you have concerns about HOA bylaws, I'd recommend reviewing them with your board and working it out through proper HOA channels. But there's no police matter here. Patricia was shaking now, either from anger or embarrassment or both. This isn't over, she said, her voice tight. Not by a long shot. You think being a cop puts you above the HOA? You think you can just ignore the rules because you have a badge? Tom kept his voice calm and reasonable. I haven't ignored any rules. I followed them exactly. You're welcome to check my permit, the bylaws, whatever you need. I've got nothing to hide. We'll see about that, Patricia hissed. She looked around at all the neighbors watching, many of them now openly smiling or whispering to each other. You're all going to regret this. Every single one of you. I'll be reviewing every single property in this neighborhood for violations. You want to gang up on me? Fine. I'll show you what happens when you disrespect the authority of this HOA. Helen Chen laughed out loud. Go ahead, Patricia. I think we'd all love to see you try. Donald held up his folder. And I think a lot of us would love to start asking questions about where all those fine payments have been going. Patricia pointed a shaking finger at him. Don't you dare threaten me. Not a threat, Donald said calmly. Just a fact. I've been doing research. Real thorough research. Public records are amazing things. Patricia looked like she wanted to say something else, but instead she just spun on her heel and marched back to her Mercedes. She got in, slammed the door hard enough that Tom was surprised the window didn't crack, and peeled out for the second time that day. Officer Reyes watched her go, then turned back to Tom. Chief, I apologize if this created any problems for you. Not your fault, Tom said, shaking his hand. You handled it professionally. For what it's worth, sir, Officer Reyes said quietly. She's kind of notorious around the department. She calls in constantly. Noise complaints, parking disputes, you name it. Usually about stuff that isn't actually illegal. Most of the time we just do a welfare check and move on. She mentioned knowing Sheriff Morrison? Tom asked casually. Officer Reyes smiled slightly. She mentions that to everyone. She does know him technically. She corners him at community events and acts like they're best friends. The sheriff mostly just nods and tries to escape. It's kind of become a running joke at the station. Tom couldn't help but laugh at that. Well, I appreciate you setting the record straight here. Anytime, sir. And welcome to the precinct. Officer Reyes nodded to Beth and the gathered neighbors, then headed back to his cruiser. As the police car pulled away, the neighbors erupted in applause and cheers. Beth was laughing and crying at the same time, hugging Tom tight. Helen came over and gave them both hugs. Donald was shaking Tom's hand so hard Tom thought it might fall off. That was the greatest thing I've ever seen, the Cubs hat guy said, still recording. I got the whole thing. Her face when she found out you were a cop? Priceless. Absolutely priceless. This is going to be legend around here, Helen said, wiping tears from her eyes. The day someone finally stood up to Patricia Holbrook and won. But Tom wasn't celebrating yet. He'd seen Patricia's face before she left. That wasn't the face of someone who was giving up. That was the face of someone planning revenge. I don't think she's done, Tom said quietly to Beth. Beth squeezed his hand. Maybe not. But at least now everyone knows you're not someone she can just bully. Yeah, Tom agreed. But something was nagging at him. All those stories from the neighbors. The missing funds Donald mentioned. The excessive fines on elderly residents. The threats of foreclosure. Patricia might be done with him for now, but Tom had a feeling he wasn't quite done with Patricia. Not yet. The garage sale wrapped up around 5 o'clock, just like Tom had planned. They'd made decent money, met most of their neighbors, and inadvertently become neighborhood heroes. Not a bad first month in Oakwood Hills. But Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That night, after they'd packed everything away and ordered pizza, Tom sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. Beth came in with 2 beers and sat down across from him. You've got that look, she said. What look? The detective look. The one where your brain won't shut off because something's bothering you. She took a sip of her beer. What is it? Tom leaned back in his chair. All those things the neighbors said today. About Patricia. The fines, the threats, the foreclosure talk. It's not just normal HOA stuff. Some of that crosses lines. So what are you thinking? I'm thinking I want to look into it a little bit. Just to make sure everything's on the level. He opened his laptop. HOA finances are public record in this county. At least they're supposed to be. Beth smiled. You can't help yourself, can you? Someone waves a red flag and off you go. 25 years of habit, Tom admitted. But seriously, if she's abusing her position or misusing funds, people need to know. Just promise me you'll be careful. That woman already hates you. I'm always careful, Tom said, which made Beth laugh because they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Over the next few days, Tom did what he did best. He dug into things. Started with the public records at the county office, HOA bylaws, financial statements, meeting minutes, all the boring paperwork that most people never bothered to read. But Tom had learned a long time ago that the devil was always in the details. The first red flag showed up in the financial statements. The HOA collected dues from 83 homes at $200 per quarter. Simple math put that at about $66,000 a year. But when Tom looked at the expenditures, things got fuzzy. There was a line item for property management services that ran almost $30,000 a year. That seemed high for a small neighborhood like this. Tom made a note and kept reading. More line items caught his eye. Legal fees at $8,000. Administrative costs at $12,000. Community Improvement Fund at $15,000. But when he looked for details about what those improvements actually were, he found almost nothing. New playground equipment 3 years ago. Some landscaping at the entrance. That was about it. He pulled up the HOA bylaws next. Found the section about garage sales right away, just like he'd thought. 48 hours notice to the board email. No mention of HOA president approval. No limit on number of tables. Patricia had either been making things up or working from some different set of rules that nobody else had seen. Tom kept digging. Found that there was a requirement for annual meetings where the board presented financial reports to homeowners. According to the meeting minutes, those had been happening. But the reports attached were vague at best. Lots of general categories, not much detail. His phone rang. It was Donald, the older gentleman from the garage sale. Tom, you got a minute? I've got something you should see. Sure, come on over. Donald showed up 20 minutes later with a box full of papers. He set it on Tom's kitchen table with a thud. Like I said at the garage sale, I've been collecting documentation. Donald explained. After my wife died, I had a lot of time on my hands. Started going through all the HOA stuff. All the fines, all the threats. Requested financial records, meeting minutes, everything I could get my hands on. Tom started going through the box. There were copies of violation notices, canceled checks for fines, email exchanges with Patricia. One folder was labeled Conflicts of Interest. What's this? Tom asked, holding it up. Donald's expression darkened. That's the good stuff. Took me a while to piece it together. You know that property management company that the HOA uses? Oakwood Management Services? I saw them in the financial statements. Big line item. Right, well, guess who owns Oakwood Management Services? Tom had a feeling he knew where this was going. Patricia? Her husband, Richard Holbrook. Same address as Patricia, same last name. Registered business owner on all the paperwork. Donald pulled out a document. Here's the incorporation papers. Filed 8 years ago, right around the time Patricia became HOA president. Tom whistled low. That's a pretty clear conflict of interest. Did she disclose this to the board? Not that I can find. And here's the kicker. Before Oakwood Management took over, the HOA was paying about $8,000 a year for property management. Now they're paying $30,000. For the same services. Who else is on the board? Tom asked. 2 other people. Nancy Winters and Phil Rodriguez. But they mostly just go along with whatever Patricia says. I don't think they actually review the finances or anything. They just show up for meetings and vote yes on whatever she proposes. Tom kept reading through Donald's documentation. It painted a picture of systematic abuse. Patricia would target specific homeowners, usually older folks or people who seemed less likely to fight back. She'd find or invent violations, levy fines, and threaten legal action if they didn't pay. Most people just paid to make the problem go away. Look at this one, Donald said, pulling out another folder. Helen Chen's situation. Patricia fined her $1,200 for that garden gnome. Said it violated the community aesthetic standards. But when I looked up the actual bylaws, there's nothing about garden decorations at all. Nothing. She made it up. And Helen paid? She paid. So did most people. Patricia makes it sound so official. Throws around legal terms, threatens foreclosure. People get scared. Tom found another folder full of similar cases. A family fined $2,000 for painting their house the wrong shade of beige. Another homeowner hit with $1,500 in fines for parking violations that weren't actually violations. An elderly man threatened with foreclosure over a dispute about his mailbox. How much money are we talking about in total? Tom asked. Donald pulled out a spreadsheet. He'd been tracking everything. By my calculations, Patricia has collected over $45,000 in fines over the past 3 years. Fines that were either excessive, improperly assessed, or completely made up. And where did that money go? That's what I can't figure out. It's supposed to go into the HOA General Fund, but when you look at the bank statements, the numbers don't add up. Money comes in, money goes out, but there's no clear accounting of where the fine payments actually end up. Tom sat back and rubbed his eyes. This was bigger than he'd thought. This wasn't just an overzealous HOA president. This was potential fraud, embezzlement, abuse of fiduciary duty. The kind of thing that could result in serious criminal charges. You know what you're sitting on here? Tom asked Donald. I know it's bad, but I'm not a lawyer or a cop or anything. I'm just a retired accountant who got mad enough to start paying attention. This is evidence of multiple crimes, Tom said. Financial fraud at minimum. Possibly extortion given the threat she's been making. Donald's eyes widened. Seriously? Dead serious? Donald, you've done incredible work here. This is better documentation than I see from some of my own detectives. So what do we do with it? Tom thought about it. He was head of major crimes, but he wasn't an investigator on this case. Couldn't be. He was a victim technically, or at least a target. He'd have to refer it to someone else. But first he wanted to make sure they had everything. I need to make some copies of this, Tom said. And I want to dig a little deeper. With your permission, I'd like to submit a formal request for HOA financial records. As a homeowner, I'm entitled to see them. Patricia will know you're investigating. Let her know. She already hates me anyway. Over the next week, Tom put in his formal request. Patricia tried to stall, said the records weren't available, claimed they were being audited. Tom politely pointed out that under state law, she had 30 days to provide them or face penalties. He might have mentioned that he knew several people at the state attorney general's office who handled HOA disputes. The records showed up 2 days later. Tom spent an entire Saturday going through them with Donald. Beth made coffee and sandwiches while they worked. What they found was damning. Money from Patricia's property management company flowing out of the HOA account. Fine payments coming in but not being properly recorded. Administrative expenses that had no receipts or documentation. Legal fees paid to a law firm that had the same address as Patricia's husband's business. It's a shell game, Tom said, laying out the papers. Money comes into the HOA, gets funneled through various expenses to companies that Richard controls and then disappears. She's been using the HOA as her personal piggy bank. How much? Beth asked. Tom did some quick math. Conservatively, I'd say she's stolen at least $80,000 over the past 5 years. Maybe more. Donald sat back looking stunned. $80,000. From her own neighbors. Mostly from people who couldn't afford to fight her, Tom added. Elderly folks on fixed incomes. Young families just getting started. Anyone who seemed vulnerable. What do we do now? Donald asked. Tom pulled out his phone. Now I call someone I trust. Someone who can investigate this properly and build a case that'll hold up in court. He dialed his friend Christine Rodriguez, who ran the Financial Crimes Division. She answered on the second ring. Chris, it's Tom. I need a favor, big one, and you're not going to believe what I've stumbled into. As Tom explained the situation, laying out the evidence, he could hear Christine taking notes on the other end. When he finished, there was a long pause. Tom, this is solid. Really solid. Send me everything you've got. I'll open a case first thing Monday morning. Thanks, Chris. One more thing. There's an HOA board meeting scheduled for next week. Regular monthly meeting. I think it's time some of us homeowners started asking questions. Christine laughed. Just try not to arrest anyone yourself, okay? I know how you get. Tom hung up and looked at Donald and Beth. Okay. We've got the evidence. We've got law enforcement ready to act. Now we just need to make sure Patricia can't hurt anyone else while the investigation happens. How do we do that? Beth asked. Tom smiled. We go to that board meeting, and we ask some very pointed questions in front of everyone. Donald grinned. I like the way you think. The monthly HOA board meeting was held in the community center on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. Usually these meetings drew maybe 5 or 6 homeowners if they were lucky. Most people had better things to do than sit through boring reports about landscaping and maintenance schedules. This meeting was different. Tom arrived at 6:45 with Beth, Donald, and Helen. The parking lot was already half full. When they walked into the meeting room, it was packed. Had to be at least 40 people there, maybe more. Neighbors Tom had met at the garage sale. People he'd never seen before. Young families, retirees, everyone in between. Word had spread that something big was happening tonight. Patricia sat at the front table with Nancy Winters and Phil Rodriguez, the other two board members. She looked composed, professional even, in a navy blazer and pearls, but Tom could see the tension in her shoulders. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know what. At 7 sharp, Patricia called the meeting to order. She went through the standard agenda items. Approval of last month's minutes. Treasurer's report, which she rushed through in about 90 seconds. Landscaping update. New trash pickup schedule. All the usual HOA business. Tom waited patiently. He'd learned long ago that timing mattered. You didn't show your hand too early. Any old business? Patricia asked, clearly hoping to move things along quickly. Actually, yes, Donald said, standing up. I'd like to discuss the HOA finances. Specifically, the property management fees we've been paying. Patricia's smile tightened. That's not really old business, Donald. And we already covered the treasurer's report. With respect, you covered it for about 60 seconds, Donald replied. I think the homeowners deserve more detail. We're paying $30,000 a year for property management. That's quite a bit of money. A murmur went through the crowd. People were nodding. Patricia shuffled some papers. The board has reviewed and approved those expenses. They're all properly documented, are they? Tom stood up now. Because I've reviewed the financial statements as well, and I have some questions. Patricia's face went hard when she saw him. Of course you do. Let me guess. You think you can come in here and disrupt another HOA function? It's becoming a pattern with you, Mr. Bradley. I'm just a concerned homeowner asking legitimate questions, Tom said calmly, which is exactly what these meetings are for, right? Nancy Winters, who'd been quiet up to this point, spoke up. What kind of questions? Let's start with Oakwood Management Services, Tom said. The company we pay for property management. Do you know who owns that company? Nancy and Phil looked at each other, then at Patricia. I'm not sure, Nancy said. It's just the company we use. It's owned by Richard Holbrook, Tom said. Patricia's husband, the room erupted. People started talking all at once. Nancy's mouth fell open. Phil looked genuinely shocked. You didn't know that? Someone called out from the back. Patricia stood up, her face flushed. That information is publicly available. There's no secret here, and my husband's company provides excellent service at competitive rates. Competitive? Donald pulled out his spreadsheet. Before your husband's company took over, we paid $8,000 a year for the same services. Now we pay $30,000. That's nearly 4 times as much. More angry murmurs from the crowd. Phil was flipping through papers, looking confused. Market rates increased, Patricia said, but her voice was less confident now. Property management costs more than it used to. Tom opened the folder he'd brought. I contacted 3 other property management companies in the area. Got quotes for a neighborhood our size. The highest quote I received was $12,000 per year. Most were around $8,000 to $10,000. So why are we paying $30,000? Patricia's hands were clenched on the table. Those quotes are meaningless. We have a contract. You can't just... Let's talk about the fines, Helen Chen interrupted, standing up. The $1,200 you made me pay for my garden gnome. Which rule did that violate, Patricia? Community Aesthetic Standards, Section 9, Patricia shot back. There is no Section 9 about garden decorations, Donald said. I've read the bylaws cover to cover. Multiple times. A man Tom didn't know stood up. She fined me $2,000 for painting my house. Said it was the wrong color, but I had it approved in writing by the board 2 years ago. I paid $1,500 for parking my work truck in my own driveway, someone else added. $800 for a fence that's been there for 15 years, another voice called out. The room was getting louder. More people were standing up, sharing their stories. Patricia was looking around wildly, trying to regain control of the meeting. Order, she shouted, banging her hand on the table. This meeting will come to order. You're all out of line. These fines were legitimate, properly assessed violations. Show us the receipts, Tom said quietly, cutting through the noise. The room went silent. Show us where all that fine money went. Because I've been through the financial statements and I can't find it. Nancy turned to Patricia. Where did the money go? I assumed it went into the general fund. It did, Patricia insisted. It's all there. You just don't understand how to read financial statements. I'm a retired accountant, Donald said. I understand just fine. And the numbers don't add up. Money comes in from fines, but it disappears into vague expense categories. Administrative costs. Legal fees paid to a firm that shares an address with your husband's business. Consulting fees to companies I can't even verify exist. Phil was looking through papers frantically now. Patricia, I never saw any of this. These expenses, I don't remember voting on them. You voted to approve the budget, Patricia snapped. That's all you needed to do. Actually, that's not all we needed to do, Phil said, his voice getting stronger. We're supposed to oversee the finances. That's our job as board members. But you always said you'd handle it, that it was too complicated for us to worry about. Tom pulled out another document. This is a formal request I submitted last week for detailed financial records. Receipts, invoices, bank statements, everything a homeowner is legally entitled to see. Patricia provided some records, but many things are still missing. Convenient gaps in the documentation. This is harassment, Patricia said, but her voice was shaking now. You're targeting me because you don't like that I enforce the rules. You're mad about your garage sale, so you're trying to destroy me. I'm not trying to destroy anyone, Tom said calmly. I'm trying to make sure our HOA is being run properly, that our money is being spent appropriately, that homeowners aren't being taken advantage of. Helen stood up again. I want my $1,200 back. That fine was bogus and we all know it. Me too, someone else called out. I want my money back. And mine. The room erupted again. People were angry now, really angry. Patricia was standing at the front table looking cornered. I move that we remove Patricia Holbrook as HOA president, Donald announced loudly. Effective immediately. I second that, Helen said instantly. You can't do that, Patricia sputtered. There are procedures. You need cause. We have cause, Tom said. Conflict of interest. Financial mismanagement. Abuse of authority. Improper assessment of fines. Take your pick. Nancy looked at Phil. They seemed to have a silent conversation. Then Nancy spoke up. I think we need to vote on this. All in favor of removing Patricia Holbrook as HOA president? Hands shot up all over the room. Tom counted quickly. Had to be at least 35 people voting yes. Opposed? 2 hands went up. Patricia's and one other person who looked confused about what was happening. Motion passes, Nancy said quietly. Patricia, you're removed from the board. Patricia stood there, frozen, her face pale except for 2 bright red spots on her cheeks. You can't. This is illegal. I'll sue. I'll sue all of you. You're welcome to try, Tom said. But you should probably know that I've already forwarded all the documentation about the HOA finances to the Financial Crimes Division of the County Police. They're opening a formal investigation on Monday. The color drained completely from Patricia's face. What? Financial fraud, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty. Those are the charges they're looking at. Possibly more, depending on what else they find. Patricia grabbed her purse and clipboard with shaking hands. This is insane. You're all insane. You have no idea what you've done. She looked around the room at all the faces watching her. I did everything for this community, everything, and this is how you repay me? She stormed out, her heels clicking rapidly on the floor. The door slammed behind her. The room was quiet for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Then someone else.